Testing.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3.
Now, I knew that Joe was one of my favorite people, but I didn't know he was your favorite people. Boy, welcome and thank you for coming to Reflections this afternoon. What a nice program we're going to have. Many of you knew Joe and his vivacious wife Spuzzy from Roanoke for many years, or from his practice and her involvement in the community. Those who did not may well have known him from walking the campus, our involvement in balladeers or other of our activities. We welcome Dr. Joe Duckwall, and as most of us here retired, we kind of throw our titles in our background. So it is Joe and Spuzzy. They've been here about a year and a half, and it's typical to what we do at Reflections. It's a chance to get to know our neighbors better. So without further ado, the doctor is in.
Well, I didn't know we had so many pediatric patients here. But anyway, good to see all of you. As you know, as all of you have made your move to Brandon Oaks, you have to get rid of stuff. And unfortunately, some of our stuff included a lot of pictures which we had taken over the years. So anyway, what you'll see today is a remnant of what we had left there. But anyway, I'm reminded of Haley Toyota is where I have my car serviced. And as I go in there and leave the instructions at the desk and go back to the waiting area to wait for the car to be serviced, I notice the sign on the wall. It says, "Be sure to tell us how we have wowed you today." So I think about that, and as I sit there waiting, then when my car is finished being serviced, I go to the desk and look at the bill, and I think to myself, wow. But anyway, I'm not sure this is what Toyota had in mind, but I didn't put any signs up for you today, so don't expect to be wowed. But this is an 86-year-old story. So it begins in Richmond, Virginia, where I was born. I was born at St. Luke's Hospital, November 21st, 1936. Excuse me, let me get a sip of water here. 1936. At that time, we lived in Sweet Hall, Virginia, which is a little rural community east of Richmond. My family consisted of my 2.5-year-old sister, as well as my mother and father. My father was a Presbyterian minister, as was his father, as was my father's brother, as was his son-in-law, as was his 2 nieces and nephews who were missionaries to Brazil. And his daughter, who married this minister, they became missionaries to Mexico and Nicaragua for 35 years. So anyway, they were able to come back to the States. But anyway, we were able to visit them in both locations while they were there serving the mission field. In 1939, we moved from Sweet Hall to Woodlawn, Virginia. And this is where I started the first grade. As you can see, this is probably a winter day. We both have stocking caps, heavy jackets. I've got Red Ryder gloves on. My friend has galoshes on, and I'm in bare feet. So my wife has always captioned this picture saying, now, seriously, would any parent want to take medical advice from this guy? But anyway, I guess over the years, some of them did. So anyway, but this was sort of my modus operandus at this little rural area where we were in. In 1943, we moved to Winchester, where my father was the pastor of a small chapel there in Winchester. And of course, as many of you know, Winchester is a home of the Apple Blossom Festival. So Spuzzy and I were great participants in that. Of course, the school children all got out to practice their various dances and things, which took place on the steps of Hanley High School, which is a beautiful high school. Winchester was so benefited by the endowment of Judge John Hanley, who was a judge in Scranton, Pennsylvania. But he never thought the people of Scranton appreciated him, but in his visits to Winchester, he felt like Winchester did appreciate him. So when he died, he left his money to as an endowment for the public schools and a public library. He made his money in the coal fields in Pennsylvania, as well as being able to get people out of being conscripted into the Union Army during the Civil War. So this was how he made his money. But anyway, they had a $43 million renovation of this school several years ago, and they brought Willie Nelson in to give a concert for the new auditorium, which was renamed for Patsy Cline, who, of course, is another Winchester resident. But anyway, Spuzzy and I were invited to that concert, and it was a great thrill to be there. Winchester, of course, is a home of Shenandoah University, and our own Jim Davis was president of there for many years. So it's amazing how many connections we have with the people here at Brandon Oaks. When we moved to Winchester, my mother engaged a piano teacher for my sister and I, since she was 9 and I was 7. So anyway, we started taking piano lessons, and over the years, she matured and eventually became the pianist at my father's little church. So when she graduated from high school and started college, then it fell to me to be the church pianist, which I did. So anyway, I learned many hymns then, and even had many of them committed to memory at this time. That was, of course, a volunteer job, but anyway, I was able to secure a paying job with the church. I got a job as the custodian. So anyway, this paid $11. Now, that's not a day or an hour or a week, that's a month. But anyway, I did get a raise before I graduated to $12.50 a month. So anyway, that was when $1 was worth $1. So I never felt like I was underpaid for that. Yeah. I started Hampton-Sydney College in 1955. Joe Rushbrook had just graduated. Paul White and Dick Wirtz followed me the year later. But anyway, we do have a Hampton-Sydney group here, not quite as active as the VMI group, but anyway, we're here. But anyway, I started dating Spuzzy after my freshman year and continued on into med school. And after my second year in med school, we were married. She had just graduated from Randolph-Macon Women's College and had secured the job with Life of Virginia in Richmond. And the headquarters were right there near MCV, so we could travel back and forth each day with just one car. And I also externed in Richmond, which meant that as a second-year medical student, you could do histories and physicals for surgical patients. So anyway, we did this in a little hospital called Grace Hospital there, which was a private hospital in Richmond. But that helped supplement our income there. After finishing my medical school, I came to Roanoke and took a rotating internship. This means you get a little smattering of each of the services: pediatric medicine, surgery, OB, and ER. So this gives you an idea of what you're going to be doing in general practice, which I thought at the time I would be doing. Our daughter was born here. That was our first child. As I was on the house staff, there was no charge for this, so that was a great perk at that particular time. Now, at the end of my internship, and this was the height of the Vietnam War, I was drafted. So a friend of mine and I decided to go to Washington and enlist in the Air Force and get a good plush assignment. So anyway, we got Blytheville Air Force Base, Arkansas. Now, Buster would say, well, you did get a good plush assignment. My goodness, what's wrong with that? But anyway, we had something like Hawaii in mind, you know. But anyway, Blytheville was hot, just like it was in Hawaii there, so they were sort of similar. But anyway, the Blytheville stint was good to us. I made lots of money compared to what I had before. We had wonderful housing. You could shop at the BX. And actually, our second child was born there. But this one wasn't free. It cost me $7.50. That included $1.50 a day each day your baby was in the nursery. But anyway, as new general medical officer on the base, of course, we were required to cover the sick call for the airmen. So they also needed a volunteer to cover the newborns in the nursery because we had no pediatrician there. So I volunteered immediately for that job. So that got me out of the sick call stint. And you can imagine what some of these airmen would have had after carousing around at night there, you know. But anyway, that was a good experience for me. And of course, I took care of pediatric patients during the day. These were dependents of the airmen there on the base. The pediatric interest made me think I did want to specialize in pediatrics, so I applied for and got accepted to a pediatric residency at MCV, which was to start when I finished my Air Force tour. So it was back to MCV. I actually got the GI Bill for this, so I got paid $150 a month for my 2-year residency there. In the meantime, my kids were growing up, and of course, as they were going to college, they all went to North Carolina schools. So I got no break on in-state tuition there. Our third child was born there at MCV, but that one actually paid me back $50 because we had Blue Cross Blue Shield at that time. Now, in 1968, we moved to Roanoke. I became a partner in a children's clinic, which was a 5-man pediatric clinic, freestanding. We were located in an old house down in Old Southwest near downtown. And in 1971, we joined the Lewis Gale Clinic when they moved out here to Salem, building the new hospital and the clinic building. I also took on a job with the Roanoke City Health Department, manning a pediatric clinic one morning a week at the Lansdowne housing project. I practiced at Lewis Gale for 25 years, and it was a good 25 years. I had good partners, wonderful nurses. I tried to maintain a healthy relationship with my patients and the parents, and tried to maintain a calming atmosphere in the office no matter what the medical situation was. And I think I was basically successful with this over the years. I did start in with as I say, the health department clinic at Lansdowne, and that was primarily run by some really good nurses. So I was sort of there just to sign my name, really. But anyway, after retirement, I took on some other projects. But the actual day that I retired, I was working on a Habitat house and was on a ladder trying to get a roof joist in, and kind of lost my balance and jumped down, and anyway I jammed my knee with the fall. That afternoon we had to attend a wedding over here at Raleigh Court Presbyterian, and I got limp into that and limped out, but I did not make it into the reception. I just stayed in the car. But when Spuzzy came out, she said, well, the clinic is giving you a retirement party tonight. So anyway, I said, well, we're going to have to go home and get crutches so I can get there, which we did. But anyway, that was the start of my retirement. After the retirement, of course, I had several endeavors. One was medical mission trips, and this was mainly managed through Solid Rock International, which is a Pentecostal charitable outfit that sponsors these trips. And our own church, Second Presbyterian, have been sending groups on that to the Dominican Republic for, I guess, the last 10 to 12 years. I went for several years. I haven't been in the last few years. But anyway, we would go pack our van with the medications we thought we would use. We would go out to the barrios and set up shop in a school or a church or a community room, and the lines would form. And of course, the family practice guys and the pediatricians would stay there all day until those lines were gone. And this was a pretty tiring day. So anyway, when we got back to the clinic and the guest house, of course, as we were lamenting our being tired, the pastor would come in and say, yeah, I'm tired too. I've been playing volleyball with kids all day. So we gave him a little hard time about this. I also, after I retired, did the medical trips for the Dominican Republic, Jamaica, St. Vincent's, and St. Lucia. All were under the auspices of the Solid Rock International. I joined the executive committee of the Roanoke Rescue Mission Board, and am still on that. We have monthly meetings, and at each of the meetings we have a testimonial from one of the clients. These are people who have come in addicted, who go through the program. Now, this is not a 2-week, 30-day program. It's just like an 18-month program. So anyway, the success rate is quite high. And to say these people are so appreciative for what they get and have gotten from the mission, they end up being a productive citizen and have come in being addicted But anyway, it's very inspiring to hear their testimonies. I also remodeled my kitchen after I retired, and this took me about 4 months. But after I did that, I found I had a lot of time, so I took another job, which I continue to do. And this is with Disability Determination Services. I review pediatric disability claims for Social Security. And again, Judge Rushbrook has been on the administrative law judge at the Social Security, so he's had experience with that. But anyway, my expertise was in the pediatric field, so anyway, I reviewed pediatric disability claims. And of course, pediatric disabilities are related to every system of the body, your brain, your heart, your lungs, your musculoskeletal, everything. And they say if you have a disability, then if your parents fall under the income and resource level, then say you're eligible for disability. So anyway, that's what I do now. I do that 20 hours a week. I start about 6:30 in the morning and come home at 11:30, 4 days a week. And I've continued to do that. Spuzzy and I also do Meals on Wheels. We have done that since I retired, and we do that one day a month. This is our route is in southeast Roanoke and Benton. Also, we were able to get a house at Smith Mountain Lake. On one of my first visits to Roanoke, interviewing for a job, my senior partner, John Walk, had me go by his place at Smith Mountain Lake on my way home to Richmond. And seeing this, I said, man, I've got to have this one day. So anyway, when I was able to do it, we got a lot and built a house there in 1977, and have continued to enjoy that as well as my grandchildren and children. I have 3 children, 7 grandchildren, and 2 great-grandchildren, twins, who are now 2 years old. But anyway, we have thoroughly enjoyed that. I've kept the lake place since we moved here, and go up there weekly to check on things. We have been here a year and a half. Brandon Oaks has been good to us, being in an atmosphere of friendliness and cordiality, starting with the administration down to housekeeping, and especially the residents. I mean, we are so proud to call this place our home. And that's my 86-year-old story. Thank you.
Joe, there will be some questions, but a couple of things as we interviewed, you mentioned your interest in music. How has that developed?
Well, as I say, I started playing the piano, and I do play every now and for a church service if it's needed. I sang in the choir in Glee Club in high school, and then in the Glee Club at Hampton-Sydney, along with Paul White, who was in there with me. Then when I came to Roanoke here, I sang with the Roanoke Valley Choral Society, as well as Second Presbyterian Church Choir. And of course here with the Balladeers, which I've thoroughly enjoyed.
Do we have questions from the audience?
Would you like me to sign you up to be on the piano concert series?
How much do you pay?
Joe, what was the biggest change you saw in the practice of pediatrics during that quarter of a century?
Well, now pediatricians don't have to attend C-sections, you know. The nurse practitioners do all of that. And of course, there are nurse practitioners now coming into practices, you know, covering the pediatrician. Now, there were no nurse practitioners in our practice when I was practicing, but now there are. And I'm not saying that's bad. I think it's just a necessary thing that's happened, because there apparently are in the retirement of doctors, there's just so many spaces that can be covered.
Others?
Joe, a classmate of yours once told me that when you go to medical school, it can have a profound impact on your life. I wonder if you found that to be true, and maybe in what way did it impact your life?
Well, of course, medical school was my bread and butter, and it has been for many, many years. I enjoyed my medical education. I felt like we had some outstanding mentors there, and my classmates again were all very helpful. We had actually lost a number of classmates my freshman year. For some reason, we lost about 25% of the class through attrition with grades and that sort of thing, which was a terrible loss. But anyway, making it through, I felt like I had accomplished a great deal.
We see a lot in the media about the thrust toward mental health for young people. Was that much of a consideration for you guys?
Well, in our practice, of course, we didn't have COVID. Now, we had epidemics. We had flu epidemics periodically. But anyway, they were over and done with very shortly. We did not have the drug situation when I was practicing. Of course, I've been retired 26 years. So anyway, I was not exposed to those elements that have sort of predisposed to mental problems there this day and age.
Hi there. How did Fuzzy get her? How did Fuzzy get her nickname?
Fuzzy got her nickname. By the way, her name is Sharon. But anyway, her nickname came from a play that her mother was in high school. And the Fuzzy was a character in the play. So when her mother became pregnant, her friends started referring to the pregnancy as Spuzzy. And her grandmother said, "Now, if y'all keep doing that, it's going to stick with her," which it did.
When you separate the children from their parents, I'm sure you saw a lot of different types of parents, those supportive, those interfering. those who knew more than you did. How did you handle these various types of caretakers in a diplomatic way?
Well, I think the question was, how do I handle difficult situations there? Well, the bottom line is, you know, I never tried to create a problem. In other words, I always tried to diffuse anything that was going to create a problem. But I think that, you know, I had a reputation for talking slow. And when I did that, people thought they were being seen for twice as long as they would if I talked fast. So anyway, that was sort of my secret for making people think, man, you have given me a lot of time here, yeah.
Yes, Joe, what would you say would be one of the biggest advances in pediatrics in your day, or losses to the profession in your day?
Advantage?
Advances or losses? Advances,
Okay.
like vaccines or something of that era? Or the loss of the doctor-patient relationship that you just described in your talking with patients back then?
Well, I think, you know, just to be truthful and honest about everything you say, I think is the key to having a good relationship, and say that's what I try to do. You know, there's so many situations where, you know, parents overreact to whatever the child has and that sort of thing, that, you know, you really need to kind of be able to be on an even keel with all that. So anyway, that's, I guess, basically what I tried to do.
This May is was Mother's Day month, and Joe's relationship with all the mothers, we thought maybe we'd have the program on Mother's Day, but that's
Well, as a matter of fact, there are some mothers here who were parents, so they may want to put in a word or two.
Excuse me. I want to ask a question. Are you familiar, am I doing this right, with Cox Hall at Hampton Sydney, COXE?
Cox
Hall.
Cox Hall.
I think it keeps people who go there.
I'm not familiar with
Because
that.
my first cousin went there, he gave that hall to Hampton Sydney.
Okay.
He's a doctor. Was a doctor.
Cox Hall. I remember Venable Hall and Morton Hall. And do you remember Cox Hall? Yeah.
way back. Okay, Sandra. Coming your way. And then we'll have one more after this if we got time.
How did you deal with parents with critically ill and children, and maybe children who had a loss of life? I mean, if a parent's told your child has leukemia, how did you deal with those difficult moments? Because I'd go crazy if somebody told me that.
Yeah. Well, you know, that's one of the things. Excuse me. That's one of the things that's changed dramatically since I started in the pediatric. I can remember in the residency, we had an oncologist, pediatric oncologist on staff, and he, of course, dealt with all the leukemia patients. And it was very rare that any leukemia patient survived. Nowadays, it's rare if a leukemia patient dies. The treatment has gotten so good that it is really a situation where, you know, the whole picture has changed on a lot of these cancer situations. But as I say, we had initially, if we ever had a leukemia patient starting out, a lot of times we'd ship them down to Memphis, Tennessee, to the Le Bonners down there, I think. Yeah, but anyway, now of course we have oncology specialists here in Roanoke. But anyway, it was in the early days we'd have to ship them, you know, to UVA, MCV, or Tennessee, wherever. Yeah.
All right, that's the last question coming from way back.
Oh shit.
So I'm honored to get the last question. It's not really a question, it's a compliment to Joe. And I think one of the compliments would be this attendance here from Brandon Oaks. But my compliment is something that I remember from about 1968. We were in a class at church with young marrieds, a lot of whom had children. And several of them had children who were patients of Dr. Duckwall. And I still remember them saying that they would make their children sick or pretend they were sick just so they could go see Dr. Duckwall. And I thought that was quite a compliment.
That's a good.
Joe, thank you so much for sharing portions of your life with us. You've given us the cover story. If y'all want the undercover story, you got to get with Spuzzy. I think that's it for today. Thank you so much for the crowd and support.
And I want to give
Reflections.
Spuzzy credit. She's lived with me for almost 62 years.
Thank you.